Hi, sixth graders. This is Miss Medra again. We're going to try something a little bit more challenging where if I cross a brown-haired person with another brown-haired person. Well, if we're looking at their alleles, and in this case, these two alleles show that they are different. We've got a big B and a little b. So that must mean that this one is heterozygous because we know that hetero means different. So if this is, we'll say the dad, and then this one is the mom, the other brown hair person. This one is actually, oops, it would help if I wrote mom. This person is also heterozygous because we've got a big B and a little b, so hetero again means different. And hetero means different. So we're going to try to figure out exactly what they would cross. But if we're talking about this person's genotype would be big B, little b, but it's going to physically or phenotype look like a brown-haired person, and the same is true for the other. So if I set this up, we're going to say, let's try to make it different colors so you guys can see difference. We'll say big B, little b, and this is coming from this one. And then we'll go big B, little b. Again, these are the alleles. These are what genetically they're going to show. Well, if I take big B from dad and a big B from mom, I'm going to get two big Bs. Well, we usually put the dominant first just because it always shows through. So if I take the big B from mom and the little b from dad, I'm going to have a heterozygous. If I take big B, and then I'm going to take my little b, and then now I've got these two little b's, so one from here, one from here. Now we're going to try to figure out exactly what their offspring will end up being like. Well, if I'm looking at theirs, I've got this one right here. So this would be 1 out of 4, and I'm just going to write it over here. 1 out of 4 are going to be big B, because 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 out of 4 is 25%. And so if I'm trying to figure out what exactly that is going to be like, well, their phenotype, that's what they are physically looking like, and genetically, or their genotype, well, phenotype is what are they going to look like? Well, we know that brown hair is dominant, so they are going to have brown hair. What is their genotype going to be? Well, it's going to be big B, big B. So we got that one figured out. However, now let's go on to, we got our 1, 2. See how if we're talking about big B, little b, there's 2 of them. So that would be 2 out of 4, or 1 out of 2 if we're simplifying it, are this big B, little b. So that would be 50%. And we're going to say phenotype and genotype. So genetically, they're going to be big B, little b, but physically, because brown hair is dominant, they're going to have brown hair. So we got those two taken care of, and I'll just do these squares so that you can kind of see the difference. Now, if we're throwing a little wrench in it, let's look at where we've got a recessive right here. We've got this guy. So little b, little b. So there's only one of them out of 4. So 1 out of 4, which is 25%. And so if we're talking what are they going to look like, their phenotype, that's physically, and their genotype, that's genetically. Well, genetically, they're going to show the little b's, which means that they are homozygous recessive. So remember, homo means the same. And they're recessive because they have the two little b's. And so because they are homozygous recessive, the recessive trait is red hair. So this one, they are going to have red hair. And so this one is homozygous recessive because it's got the two little b's. We've got our 50%, if we got a big B and a little b, that would be heterozygous. Whoops. Because we know hetero means different, and we've got a big B and a little b, so those are different. But then we've got two of the same up here, so this would be homozygous. Homo means the same, and because there are two capital letters, that means that it is dominant. All right, now let's try to kind of sum everything up. So if we're trying to figure out what exactly are their kids going to look like, well, if we're talking about their kids, odds of them having kids, so offspring. Well, what is their, we'll say, genotype? And that's genetics. And so if we're talking about their genetics, they are going to have 25% are going to be big B, 50% are going to be big B, little b, and 25%, or 1 out of 4, is going to be little b. Yay, now we know what their genetic, but people don't really worry too much about their genetics. They're more worried about what are the kids going to look like. So let's try to figure out what their offspring is going to look like, which would be their phenotype. So if we're talking about phenotype, that's what they physically look like. Well, we know that this one's going to have brown hair, red hair. Well, 50% are going to have brown hair. Well, 50% plus 25% are going to have brown hair. So that would mean 75%, or 3 out of 4, are going to have brown hair. And that would mean that 25%, or 1 out of 4, are going to have that red hair, because red hair is recessive.